Welcome to the Ages of Rock podcast with your hosts Bill Algie, Dennis Talbot, and Alan Tate. We are three guys who have one thing in common, a love of rock and roll. Our goal is to talk about all things rock. We hope you find this show intriguing, funny, and occasionally highly opinionated. Enjoy! Go.
Hey, welcome to the Ages of Rock podcast. This is episode 100.
We made it, folks!
Yeah. That's crazy. I'd have never guessed we'd have made it to 2, let alone to 100. So tonight we've got a very special guest, and his name is Tim Rozner, and he is going to be joining us here in a little bit. He's on the phone. He's on here now. He's on the phone because he does not have Skype, so we're joining him on phone. Hey, Tim, how you doing?
Hello, guys. How are you tonight?
Doing great, man. We're excited to have you.
Doing fantastic. Looking forward to talking about some classic rock and roll.
Cool. So Tim is a production coordinator and let's see, writer. My God, man, the list is huge. We can just go on and on. We'll get a little bit more into that in a little bit later. But right now we're going to talk about some music news or just news in general. So Alan, you want to start?
Yes, I would like to start with, we have a 5-star review on iTunes from our friend Sonny Pooney. So I'd like to read that real quick.
I paid him for that.
You paid him for that. Well, you did not pay him enough.
Oh.
But anyway, he says, with all the podcasts in this world now, it is so refreshing to hear honest opinions from real friends. Alan, Bill, and Dennis are just 3 close friends having conversations that are free-flowing with tons of laughter. They are Kiss fans first, but love all music and discuss a variety of topics. You got to give this podcast a chance. You won't be sorry. Keep up the great work, guys. Thanks, Sonny Pooney. Now, if
Sonny.
You would like to give us a 5-star review, you can do that on iTunes. Hit us up on Facebook. Give us a review there. You can hit us up on YouTube. We'd love to have those reviews. If you get us a good review, we'll read it on a show. That's all I got this week.
And we were friends up to what, episode 74, wasn't it, or something? These guys are wearing on me.
Yeah, something like that. Dennis, what do you got, man?
Dude, we just had something happen here, a couple nights ago. Josh Home from Queens of the Stone Age was doing a little traveling out on the stage and kind of turned around and saw a female photographer in the pit, which she was credited. I mean, she was supposed to be there. She had credentials. And I guess he had kicked a couple lights and did this, and he walks back and kind of kicks her camera, which she's right behind, and pretty well gave an imprint of a camera to her face. I know they said that she went to, I know I've heard 2 conflicting reports. She said she spent the night in the emergency room, but she did come back out and finish, whatever that night doing that. She said she was bruised and what have you. He has come out and apologized. There's a video out, and basically, and he apologizes to her and for what he done. There was comments made earlier on that he, kind of acted a little bit like he'd been drinking or something that night. He was making comments about the band after them and the band before them, just kind of being a little bit arrogant. And on the video itself, it kind of sounds like that. His apology was like he apologized to her, plus his family and his mom and dad and his kids, and and basically, I need to take care of this and blah blah blah. So that's kind of what it sounded like. What do you guys? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Everybody's kind of seen the video.
I have something kind of humorous to interject that is kind of indirectly related to it. Yesterday, today is December the 12th, the day we're recording this. Yesterday, they were supposed to announce the Rocklahoma lineup at noon Central.
Yeah.
And about 10 or 11 o'clock yesterday, they posted a message on Facebook that said, due to unforeseen circumstances, one of the confirmed acts is no longer going to be on the bill.
Uh-oh.
So the comments that on the Facebook page were pretty funny because people were just losing their minds because they don't have the lineup of an act that's not even happening until Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
But my friend Trent from the Thunder Underground podcast posted a comment on there, And he said, so in other words, you're saying we're trying to find somebody to replace Queens of the Stone Age. I just thought that was funny, and it will.
Sounds like he's going to pay the lady and not get paid all at the same time.
Right. And
Exactly.
it will be kind of interesting to find out if Queens of the Stone Age was supposed to be at Rocklahoma.
I think they were at the Rock on the Range. So you said that those are very similar, Alan?
Yeah, they are on the bill for Rock on the Range.
Right. So maybe there's not.
They don't have a complete identical, list of acts from one weekend to the next, but there are a lot of the people that go from one festival to the other.
Sure.
Yeah, festival season. That's what I call it.
You have to wait after the show's announced to see who hasn't embarrassed themselves or died of an overdose. So
that doesn't even mean anything.
Then you'll know what the act is.
Well, Tim, that doesn't necessarily mean anything because Soundgarden was supposed to be at Rocklahoma last year, and Chris Cornell passed away like the week before. So
yeah, yep, and it's happened. I mean, there's certainly a smaller list to pick from this year, unfortunately, and
it's
just
smaller every year.
Greats, some greats, man. We just it's been a tough year for rock and roll.
Oh,
the last 3 years have been tough. There's just been,
and unfortunately, we're all getting to that age where all of our heroes are becoming of age, and and they didn't live the best of healthier lives anyway, so they're probably not going to live to be 90.
And one thing that most people don't see and don't realize is the road crews who have been with a lot of these artists their entire career are pretty much the same age group, and the first generation of people who pioneered rock and roll touring and concerts are quickly fading, as well as the David Bowies and the Greg Allmans, and it's been a tough slog. It's been a real tough year on the touring side. We've lost a lot of legends this year.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's all I have to say.
We do a hell of a big party for them every year in January in Palm Springs, where we've been the industry have been getting together for quite a few years now, and we've decided we celebrate those people, and we do a good job of it.
That's pretty cool.
That sounds cool.
That's really neat.
Yeah,
that's neat.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
So where should we start, gentlemen?
Well, let's start with. All right, Tim. So why don't you do a better introduction than I did, and talk a little bit about where you're from and how you got into this and what you're currently doing. I know what you're currently doing because I called you the first time we talked, and you were routing a tour for some crazy thing.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much a constant in one project or another. But really, how it started for me is coincidentally, my oldest brother, who you gentlemen are familiar with in your other vocations. He really turned me on. He was when he was in high school. He was on the radio station, which has become it's called WLTL in LaGrange, Illinois. And my brother Jack was the station was relatively new, and through being on the radio station, he would bring home records. And of course, being, I'm the middle brother of 5 boys, and being the middle brother, what do? Is you nab everything your oldest brother brings home because that's the coolest thing around. So I really started playing like 45s and things like that he would bring home, and eventually albums of everything from, early Stevie Wonder. Kind of funny. I was a young white kid, but a little white kid, but I was into the Four Tops and the Temptations. When I was in like 4th grade, I knew all the words of Psychedelic Shack and Cloud Nine and, stuff like that. And I also started to like the blues. I kind of really thought jazz was very intriguing, but I really fell in love with rock and roll, and progressive rock at that time was really new. But, the first show I ever saw was The American Breed, Bend Me, Shape Me, and some of those guys grew up where we grew up in Brookfield, Illinois, and they were a Chicago band. And first show, I was 8 years old and saw that band, and I think then started to catch the fever a little bit more. second show I ever saw and got the bug a little bit more on, and yes, moron. I did say moron. That I got the bug on was Badfinger, and followed by Cat Stevens, and then I was hooked. And then next thing you know, in high school, I became part of the radio station, started getting into theater and TV, and really into music, and had a guitar, had a bass, and we had a band, and we played everything we could. We played Humble Pie, and we played Eric Clapton, we played Frampton, and all late '70s stuff, and so really that whole thing kind of just I guess the fire got lit early. I give my brother Jack and my brother Tom, my other older brother, a lot of credit for turning me on to a lot of different types of music early on. Before any of my peers were listening to music, I was listening to music and had a cheap turntable and stuff, and so I got interested in music, but the bug really caught me with live concerts. And let's kind of fast forward through my high school years. I'm in Chicago, so you have access to all the world's greatest entertainers are coming through a major market, and certainly I went to as many shows as I could. I saw Zeppelin, I saw Pink Floyd, and a lot of the shows that had a huge impact on me, because I was kind of a little bit of a gearhead. I love to take things apart. I built my own lighting system when I was in high school out of floodlights and stuff like that. And so some of the bands that really just took a hold of me were bands like Genesis and Floyd, and just the bands that had such over-the-top productions. It was a culmination of taking this unbelievably creative music, especially with those particular bands and all these other bands coming out, and now taking this new kind of idea of how to present this, and really it was I realized it was just this unbelievable toy box of fun toys and limitless ideas, because the whole beginning of that thrust into theatrics and parts of the show were started by bands like Genesis and Floyd, where they actually put the research and development money into the technology for moving lighting and intelligent lighting and computerized tie-ins with the shows. And so seeing all that, it just caught me. And, I'm going to give you the very condensed version, but, through my high school years, I graduated in '77, and through my high school years, I not only went to a lot of shows, but started producing shows in my high school. And now I went to a phenomenal high school. It was huge. We had almost 5,000 people from freshman to senior in our class, in our graduating class, and in our class alone, 1,200, 1,300 people. So it was a big high school with lots of resources and lots of creative people and unbelievable teachers. Well, I was real fortunate to have a teacher named Kathleen Singletary who nabbed me and kind of fed gasoline into the fire, if you will, and made the school and all its resources, the entire theater department, AV, everybody, available to do these. We developed these multimedia shows. The first one was about the high school. The second one, my junior year, was about the Beatles. And a lot of people think that this was one of the predecessors to Beatlemania and Beatles Away with Words, because this was a couple years before, and the next company that started was in Chicago, and it was a similar thing to what we had done in our high school, and we actually toured through a couple of places, but it all started there, and through that, and through seeing these shows, I was part of, and if I ever say I like to correct myself, because anything I've ever done has been part of a lot of people, creative and, empowering me and everything else, and creative themselves. But a lot of people put together these shows that became, we used 36, there was no video at the time, so we used 36 slide projectors and 16 millimeter movies, and pyro and projection and lighting and live performance. And, we learned how to do sound reinforcement and all that stuff. Well, that fast forwarded into when I graduated high school. This high school was also so lucky and unique to have a place called the Corral. Now, what the Corral was a youth organization located next to one of the two campuses. There was actually now check this out, guys. This is amazing. They did a fundraiser in the 50s, and they built this building to have like sock hops and things, and it went all the way through when I was in high school into the late 70s, where they had bands. I saw Styx there when I was a kid. I saw Rufus and Chaka Khan there when I was a kid. Well, as soon as I graduated, it was about the time that kids, in high school were getting a little more apathetic. So this place the attendance was down, and it wasn't so cool to be there, and so I graduated high school, and the year after I graduated in 1978, there was an article in the local paper, and the article said that from the people that were the student advisors that were running it, we don't want this place anymore. The kids don't want it. Well, I saw that article, and unbeknownst to me, a kind of a decent friend of mine that I'd known and jammed with in some bands also saw the article. We literally bumped into each other at the bottom of the stairs going up to this meeting to stomp our feet and say, you can't close this place down. It's important for the kids. Man, we grew up there. We saw all these great bands. So you got to understand that. I mean, there were amazing bands that came through there. That's where we had the roots of rock and roll. So fast forwarding, they said, okay, two kids just out of high school, you want to pretend to be adults, you run it. Well, the guy that I'm talking about, his name is Rocco Reedy, and I'll tell you about Rocco in a few minutes. So Rocco and I decided we're going to run this place. For a year and a half, we ran it. At the end of running the place, we ran into an opportunity where we needed to do a fundraiser, and we, through one of the students that was involved, we got a contact with the manager from Muddy Waters, the blues legend. And, of course, in Chicago, it not only in the world, but especially in Chicago, it means a huge thing. So we got Muddy Waters to do a show. And you have to understand, this is at the time, 61 or 2-year-old blues legend playing in front of 14, 15, 16-year-old white kids. And we packed the place. And, we got Muddy to be the grand marshal for the parade. Muddy packed the place. Coco Taylor was the opening act. It was a legendary show.
Wow.
And I'll tell you a little bit more about that story in a second. But so let's fast forward from that. So a couple months after we did that show, we're in the black. Now, my buddy that was with me on this venture, Rocco Reedy, his real name is Tom Reedy. He's a couple years older than me. He graduated with my brother. He got a job offer to go and be one of the original guitar technicians for Styx. And amongst other things, his career is every bit as amazing as mine, and I talk to him every day. But he got this job offer, so he left. I stayed there a little while more and was just ready to go back to college down to Southern Illinois, where I was going to run the concert program down there, and I was a week away from leaving. I had my books, classes, place to live, the whole 9 yards, and I got a call on the telephone, and I'm 19. And got a call on the telephone from Muddy Waters' manager, and Muddy Waters' manager said, hey, Tim, what are you doing right now? I said, well, I'm just getting ready to leave for college. Oh, okay, well, maybe you're not interested, but then again, maybe you are. Muddy just came back from Japan opening for Eric Clapton, and while he was there, he had a falling out with his band and his tour manager, and he fired them all. I said, oh, my. Okay. So, and I'm thinking, how can I help? And I'm thinking, geez, I don't know if I know any blues guitar players or anything, and I certainly am not up to the task. He said, well, Muddy really liked how you produced the show, the fundraiser and everything, and he's looking for a tour manager and wanted to know if you'd be interested. And this manager knew exactly that I was just out of high school and, all that stuff. And I said, well, let me think about it. So I talked to my parents. They were dead set against it, told me I'd never go back to college if I did it. Although they knew kind of where I was leaning. And, and this all happened like, I can't even remember. It seemed like 2 seconds, but it was probably about 15 minutes. And I just remember saying to my parents, I don't know, Mom and Dad, think about it. How many opportunities in anybody's life do they have a chance to work with or be a part of or be a living legend? I said, how many living legends can you even name? And I said, Muddy Waters is a living legend, and I want to be in this business, and I think I just got the opportunity of a lifetime. So I'm 19, and my parents basically said, you got to do what you got to do, but just know. And, my mom had a distant relative that was a musician that turned into an alcoholic. Everybody's got a terrible story about the road, and most of them are probably true. But I called the manager back. Don't think I even asked for what the salary was. I just said, I'll do it. And, never, I've taken some family vacations into some other states, but he told me, well, do you have a passport? I said, no. I said, well, and this is in the days where you could get a passport quick, but he said, well, you probably need to go tomorrow and get one. I said, really? He said, yeah, we'll be leaving for Europe for a month in about a week and a half, and we've got 3 shows before that. Oh, really? Okay. So never produced a live show with a professional artist before in my life. And I'm 19, and now in an hour's time, I'm canceling college, getting a passport, and scraping up all the money to buy the most expensive camera I could afford, and trying to figure out how not to be uncool and sound new. But yet I'm going to Europe in a week and a half. And by the way, I got 3 shows to do. So, and stop me if this is too long, but the first 3 shows of my career, the first show was the Union Bar in Minneapolis. I think it was 190 people there. And
Noah, stop.
Did you say stop?
No,
I was talking to my son who's in there banging around.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It's a drum. No, I keep banging. Anyway, so the first show was the Union Bar in Minneapolis with 190 people, where I didn't know any better, but I was trying to, I read the contract and tried to figure out what the hell my job was as the. Oh, and by the way, I was hired. I was the tour manager for Muddy Waters. But I was also the guitar technician. I was the accountant. I was the driver. I was the bodyguard. I was the Sherpa. I was the advisor. There were a lot of titles. Anyway,
many hats to wear, huh?
There are many hats.
Yeah, at the right age of 19.
And the ripe age of 19. Now, let me give you some context. So Muddy at the time was 61. The keyboard player, Lovey Lee, was, I think, 78. The bass player was 65. The Ernest Johnson, these are all famous blues names, too, by the way. The harmonica player, George Mojo Dreamy Eyes Buford, was in his late 60s. The now legendary blues guitarist John Primer, who was in Muddy's band at the time, was in his mid-50s, and Rick Crayer, the only other white guy anywhere around, was in his late 40s to mid-50s. So everybody's got me by about 15 to 25 to 30 years. And so that was the first show in Minneapolis, and I'm like, wow, it's a club show. Okay, this is really crazy. And I'm just trying to get my feet under me and just trying to take it all in. And I had to start my first day and every day like I'd been there, number one. And number two, really not making the same mistake twice if I could help it, because there was a big spotlight on me. And so my second show, guys, was and it all started to dawn on me what is really happening now. The second show was in Wisconsin, in the middle of a dirt racetrack, and it was a blues festival. And I thought I knew, the blues and all the legends, but next thing you know, I'm in a Winnebago. And in the Winnebago, there's me, 19-year-old white kid, Muddy, B.B. King, Albert King was still alive there at the time, Luther Allison, James Cotton, and hold on, I'm missing a guy. Albert Collins. Okay.
Wow.
All in the
My
trailer at
gosh.
the same time. Now these guys are talking black Southern shuck and jive to where and they know, and they're laughing at me because they know they're communicating in front of me. They know I can't understand a damn word they're saying. And they're laughing. They're having the best time just talking, just having a great time, all old friends. But I realized I'm sitting in this Winnebago, and I realized, holy crap. Now it's a couple days later, and I'm sitting in the middle of royalty, just me,
Right.
in the middle of royalty in the blues world. And I'm sitting there witnessing people that are legends that are totally disarmed, and I'm just there witnessing history.
Wow.
I'm like my second day. Okay, so
And
I'm
nothing
like,
says blues like Winnebago.
you know what? I mean, the whole thing. Guys, I got to tell you, I came to appreciate, and I came to appreciate. I ate the best barbecue in the world. They turned me
Yeah,
on when
sure.
we go to the South. I ate the best barbecue in the world. I learned to like, whether I liked them or not, greens and all kinds of Southern fare and you know what, man? Yeah, it was. And you just, there was beauty to it because it was a world that, they let me into, and it was totally cool. And then the third
And
show.
Here you were thinking about going back to college, and you could have missed
No
that.
kidding.
After the
So,
second day, it's like going, holy shit, I made a good
and
decision.
then look, I had reservations. I'm like, man, do I really want to miss the college experience? But then again, I thought, and I had no idea. I thought I knew what this opportunity could be, but I really had no idea. And it was in my face on the second day. Now, the third day, the third day was back in Chicago. Now you have to understand, I have now not going to college, and I'm on the road officially. So even though I've only been gone a couple days, my parents, particularly my mom, was like, really anxious to see me, even though I've been only gone a couple days. Well, where the third show was held was downtown Chicago at the Chicago Jazz Festival on the Petrillo Bandshell stage. And there was a crowd of 75,000 people there, not in bleachers, in a field.
Wow.
Okay, in a field. So basically, when you're standing on stage, there are people as far back as you can see, from far to side and anywhere else. And so, I didn't have time to go home, so I had my parents come down to the show, and I brought them on stage. And the first time they saw me do this is they saw me announce Muddy Waters in front of 75,000 people. And, the roar, my voice coming over the PA in front of these people and introducing Muddy, and, the reaction and the electricity of that. I remember coming to them and my dad looking at me and he goes, I think you'll be okay with this. I think.
You went from what?
And so, from there, guys, it was a launching pad, and I could go on and talk. I know you want to talk about some of the more current stuff, and we will. But one of the things, that gives you an idea of the unbelievable opportunity and start that I was able to get at such a young age, and it was. So one of those things where somebody had a little faith, gave me an opportunity, and I stepped into the path. And if I wouldn't have, it would have been a whole different way. But so by working with Muddy, I was able to meet almost every one of my living heroes before my 20th birthday, because they all came into Muddy's dressing room when we were in a certain city, and they paid homage to him like they were bowing at the feet of the king. And that included, everybody that was my idol at the time, from, Mick Jagger and Keith and, Eric Clapton and Johnny Winter and, Greg Allman and, Jimmy Page. It was just like Bob Dylan, Roy Clark, all these people. And so at an early age, one of the things we talked about is, did I ever get starstruck, the fanboy thing?
Yeah.
And I think in a funny way, I had this unique preconditioned training to force myself, because I met such big stars at such an early age so quick, that I had to develop an ease with them. And I found out right away that with all those people, no matter how big they are, with very few exceptions, it's all about, your energy and your body English and your approach, and they're normal people. And they, it's tiring to be on that pedestal all the time. And sometimes it's refreshing to have a normal conversation with a normal person that's not intimidated by you, from, meaning me talking to them. And through that, it's, I learned then, and it's funny enough, because one of the things when you guys meet somebody and they're a big star for you, and I've met almost everybody I idolized in high school, and that's always an interesting thing. Like, how's that going to make you feel, man? You remember how you felt then. They were on the top of your mountain. And the funny thing is, when I started with Muddy, and you saw people like Mick Jagger come in, and in Muddy's presence, Mick Jagger sat in the opposite chair from me, and it was almost in the room like he and I were equals in Muddy's presence. So, not that we were, of course, but just the fact that you could have a nice conversation and these people were relaxed in his presence and came in to give him respect. I saw that, and it kind of taught me that they're normal people and they want to be treated like normal people, and they like that. And they like, I've also had a thing where I don't try to be their best friend. I just try to be a friend, and I try to be genuine. And through that, I've, met an awful lot of people and still have a good association with most of them.
Well, those guys too, though, if you think about it, those guys that were in there to meet Muddy were probably having fanboy moments themselves.
Oh, for sure. I saw people.
They were just like,
there were people that came in that were like little kids, and you're talking about people that, are amazing. But they knew. I mean, when you have Bob Dylan come in and they're basically coming in and kissing his ring, it really was amazing. It was amazing. And one of the other things that we talked about is how, and touched on briefly, is how life has such a funny way of coming full circle. And when I worked for Muddy, one of Muddy's closest friends, for obvious reasons, was Eric Clapton. And Eric Clapton revered Muddy. Muddy was the best man at Eric's wedding. Eric was the best man at Muddy's wedding. They were great friends. And the last live show that Muddy ever did, we flew to Florida. It was me, Muddy's wife, and Muddy's manager. We flew to Florida to surprise Eric on the last show of his Another Ticket tour, and I think in '82. And after the show, Muddy's wife was tired, and Muddy's manager was tired. They decided to go back to the hotel. So after the show, it was the last show of the tour, so the crew had to pack up a little bit, but they were going to have an end of tour party. So they had rented the whole bar at the Hallandale Marriott, and so after the show, everybody else was gone. So all of a sudden, here's a limo, and it's Muddy, Eric Clapton, and me. And so, I'm with Muddy. So here we go. We go in the limo, and we go back to the hotel. And Eric had been sober for a little over a year, so he wasn't drinking. Muddy loved to drink champagne, and I was being neutral to not make Eric feel uncomfortable. But we sat there for a little over an hour before any of the crew came up, with just the three of us there. And you find yourself in these moments where, and Eric, I'm sure, knew he was trying to be nice. He really wanted to talk to Muddy, but here's a 20-year-old kid. So I wanted to not be in the way, but how do you talk to Eric Clapton? Well, I decided to bring up talking about guitars, talking about Strats. And I knew enough to fake my way through it, and he was nice enough to engage me and, not have me totally out of the conversation. But you're flying the wall for these things, and you kind of just realize that this is really cool, and it's significant, and it's something that everybody would want to do, but it's also, he's a normal guy. And because of that, it's really, I think, made my job and what I have to do and how I have to communicate to rock stars and everybody else about the projects we do a lot easier, because, you have respect for them. I have great respect for them, and I love many of them as friends, but they're all people.
Exactly. Yes, you're right. Whenever, at least I've been in that situation where the first time when I met Gene Simmons, I mean, I was freaked out. I told the story before on the show, but my son and I were at a concert. We got invited to go backstage to meet Gene Simmons, and there's a whole story there. But I mean, I was like just really freaked out, having a really big problem with it. I mean, not with it, but just the fact it was actually going to happen. And we get down to get ready to go backstage, and the production person that had come out and gotten us said, stopped me before we went back. I said, "Are you okay? Because you're just a little over the edge."
Now, what tour was that on?
That was 2009.
Okay, that was way after me. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, and he was really.
I was wondering if I was the guy that checked on you. Just, we could have had a moment there for a second. It could have been one of those full circle moments right before us.
When you were telling that story, I'm sitting there going, "Oh shit, what year was that?" But
well, funny enough. Now, and let's talk Gene. Okay, so now I had met Gene before. I had done a number of benefit shows on the West Coast. A number of them with Ozzy and Ozzy and friends, and so I produced a number of these things. And Gene was on, and Paul was there a couple times. So I'd met him a few times, but first time I really met him was basically when I was hired to work for them. Now, an interesting thing about it was I had just finished 7 straight years of Aerosmith, and so so I had seen, prior to joining KISS for another 7 years, I had seen, pretty much everything you're going to see out there. And you guys could be very imaginative in every aspect. And so after 7 years with Aerosmith, and it was, great successful run all the way through Permanent Vacation, Pump, and, the MTV 10th anniversary and, all that stuff. It was done with mirrors. But so I just finished with those guys, and I got the call to do KISS. Now, it was for the Revenge Tour. And, and it was funny. I always liked KISS, but I always liked them musically, but I loved them showmanship wise. And and you go back to the thought process of Genesis and Floyd and all these bands. Well, KISS was another band that brought in their own brand of the ultimate toy box, the limitless, how can you top this, and the sky's the limit kind of mentality. And so that instantly appealed to me. Everybody knew. Now, when I joined with KISS, they were not at the height of their popularity. They were actually, we did 3/4 of that tour, and the last leg of the tour we canceled because of lack of ticket sales. And then it was followed by the reunion tour. But when I first came in to meet Gene, it was much different than when I first met Steven and Joe. The first day I met Steven, the first day I actually officially was working for Steven and Joe, and went into the dressing room as their production manager, and got these. So you're our production manager. Funny enough, for Steven, Tyler, and Joe Perry, when I walked into their dressing room, they had Muddy Waters playing in the background. Okay, so the first question out of their mouth, and this is a funny thing. Again, a surreal moment. It's me, Steven, and Joe in the dressing room, and so Steven says sarcastically, "So, MF, who have you worked for?" And I said, "Well, I started off working for that guy you're playing on your boombox here. He goes, what? I go, yeah, Muddy Waters. I was his tour manager, and worked with him all the way until he died. And I was a pallbearer at his funeral, which I knew would hit home. And he looked at me, he goes, are you shitting me? I go, no, I'm not kidding. And both Stephen and Joe got on their hands and knees and gave me a "we're not worthy" on the first day.
That's awesome.
Jokingly, of course. They did their best to try to torture me from that point on. But but it was a funny start. In contrast to the first day that I met with Gene as the official production manager for the rock band Kiss.
And get on his hands and knees and pray.
No, much different, yeah.
He wanted you to
And
get
so,
on your hands and knees.
so the funny part about it is I had a former employee of mine on a different tour was working for Kiss at that time and heard that I had just been called to ask if I wanted to accept this job. And so he called me right away before I called the office, and he said, hey, Tim, let me just give you a little heads up on something. He goes, I think this may be no surprise to you, but Gene is what he seems. When he first talks to you, he takes a measure of you, and he's a big, tall guy, and don't be surprised if he kind of lords over you and sees what you're made of. And, he said, I know you're not a shrinking violet, so you'll have no problem, but just know that it's probably coming. And so I said, yeah, okay, good. So sure enough, I met with Gene and Paul, and Paul, very businesslike as usual, and just a very, very nice guy. You could tell he's a good guy, and he's going to communicate. And Gene, the businessman, and Gene is like whipping out the third degree, and obviously I passed, and we went on and did the Revenge tour, and then the Revenge tour ended, and what really happened, and the dirty details we won't go over on the podcast, but basically the plan for the reunion tour came about in a very, very interesting way. Something that had been the olive branch that had been missing for a long time was a third party, and the way that third party was introduced, which was MTV, is another interesting story. Maybe we'll go over on a future podcast. But the basics of it is we thought that if a third party floated the idea of the original or the current Kiss doing an MTV Unplugged and a surprise walk-on by the other two guys. The beauty of Unplugged, Unplugged was produced by a dear friend of mine, Alex Coletti, who I worked with on many. I used to do a lot of the MTV Spring Break when MTV actually did live music. I would go to all the places where there were 300,000 college women and rough it through a month of shows on the beach.
That's probably an after podcast discussion.
Yeah, that is an after podcast. Yes, that's and they were great shows, but so we ended up doing a Kiss, and it's a legendary show, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. It's the Kiss Unplugged, where Peter and Ace joined them, and the beauty of it was that third party that was able to extend that olive branch, where everybody could accept it and nobody had to cross any lines first. They all crossed the line together and joined. And yes, believe me, there's a lot to be said for the persuasion of perceived income to mend fences. And that certainly was a factor, always was a factor. And, hey, they all had another opportunity in their career to do something that was just amazing. And, right. All the politics and bullshit aside, we had an unbelievable time doing it.
Right. Can I ask you a question, Tim, real quick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, as far as, we all know that the MTV was the kind of a pivotal point, but the official conventions, was that also a thing to go out there and test this out? As far as, I mean, I know that
No, really, the conventions happen pretty much. That was an afterthought after the reunion tour. The conventions. No, hang on.
Conventions were before that and before the MTV, because Peter came to the one in
Los Angeles.
I think it was in Los Angeles toward the end. But the funny thing was
the one in Los Angeles was early on.
Was that early on?
That was early on.
But because the funny thing was, and I had asked you, I had talked to you earlier about this too. When the conventions were out, they talked up, Carnival of Souls the whole time. I went to two of them. I went to Nashville and I went to the one in Indianapolis. And they talked about at the time, it wasn't called Carnival of Souls. I think at one time they called it Head or something like that. And they actually had artwork. And I remember when they were talking about it, they kept saying, "Oh, this new album is going to be really good and really good." So we were all pumped up for this new album. Well, then as soon as this was over, MTV happened, and then of course, Carnival of Souls got shelved.
Well, I can tell you from what I know, and and I was right in the thick of it, and so it would have been hard for me to miss. But then, hey,
Sure.
It could have happened. But really, when the MTV show happened.
Right.
They and I guarantee it, they had never been in the same room together to do a rehearsal of any kind. It started off, even though everybody saw the magic of the idea, it was not easy to get to the point of all of them showing up at the same time in Sony Studios in New York for that.
Right.
There was a lot of work, a lot of negotiating, a lot of tiptoeing. So I don't see, people have been floating the idea of, it's just like everything you're hearing about the Zeppelin reunions now, and that it takes so much for Plant and everybody to quash the rumors, because it's constant. It's a constant thing. But from my viewpoint, if anybody had pre-designs and setting things up, they were so far away from anything. I mean, things when they started moving in, let's say, seismic size movement. It took so long to get to the point where they had movement where they were going to get together and do that show.
Right.
So I don't think, people had pipe dreams, and I think, hey, it's kind of funny when you have the makeup off and Ace and Peter are out of the band and Gene and Paul are doing all the other albums, and at a certain point there was enough other competition. Grunge came in, hair metal was, as for all the peers at that time, they hit a downside. It hurt Kiss's business, Bon Jovi's business, Motley's business, Aerosmith's business, everybody's business. It wasn't until bands like Aerosmith started doing ballads that they were all stuck in the mud. And, at that point, you're not going to give anything up business-wise if you're a smart businessman when you don't have to. And certainly when things are rolling, you don't have to give anything up. When you start canceling a leg of the tour, and people are showing you the reality in potential dollars of what the reunion tour, the size. We knew, as soon as they got serious about it, and they went through the review. And at that time, it was, they didn't have a manager, so it was really Gene and Paul managing themselves, and I was interfacing with them as much as I could, just spending time. I was tour manager and production manager at that point. They quickly came upon it when they decided to hire Doc McGee, which we sat and talked about at that time. And they were interviewing a number of managers, and we talked about it. And I had known Doc and loved Doc, and just, he's the Barnum and Bailey of rock and roll, and he's somebody that maximizes the potential of the idea. And he was a great fit for them. And when they did that and we started to plan that, we knew right away it was going to be, it was the first time in 17 years. The anticipation for the reunion tour the other thing, guys, is if there was any talk about the Carnival of Souls or any of that kind of stuff, simply Kiss by nature, they have, if you're a Kiss fan, you get lit on fire by their songs, but most of the people that are Kiss fans are there because of their shows, because they relentlessly toured. Their shows were second to none, still are. And, so because that's the case, I won't speak for them because it'd be wrong for me to do it, but I don't think their mindset really was ever like, hey, let's get together with the original lineup and do a new record, where once you do the reunion tour, then you can do, then you're so golden you could polish a golden Kiss turd and people would buy it.
I think they did.
and they may have, but you got to give them a lot of credit.
Right.
They worked, once they decided to do that, they all worked really hard.
Right.
And it's kind of funny how they had to work to get to that point of the reunion tour, because the starting line was in reality Tiger Stadium, and that was the international opening of the tour of the reunion. First time makeup in 17 years, and that was it. And they threw a few super pain in the ass shows that were really small in the way right before that, to see if we were crazy enough, and we were. But that's where it started right there. I just think that there's always been talk of the album and projects and get together, but to play live, that's who they are.
Yeah.
And
actually, and Alan and I and Bill were all at that second show in Louisville at Freedom Hall. We were all.
Were you?
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
We didn't. Bill and I actually, we didn't know, or he knew Alan. I didn't know Alan at the time, but Bill and I went.
Bill back then.
No, we didn't know back. We didn't.
Oh,
know
you didn't know him
then.
either.
Oh no,
but,
no.
But Bill and I went, and and that was my first time to ever see Kiss with makeup too. So I almost had kind of like tears in my eyes.
Well, I have to tell you, I hope you enjoyed that, because I remember that show distinctly, because we were completely. I think the band was doing okay, but the production staff was completely wiped out for that show. Even though we had a day off, doing a stadium show where we rehearsed to open the tour internationally, international press everywhere. I mean, everything we did that night, and every night was over the top, but just coordinating the fireworks for the Tiger Stadium show was tiring. Everything was just. We had gone nonstop for a couple weeks. No sleep, and it wasn't drug fueled. It was adrenaline. And we just had so much to do, and our goals were very lofty, and our expectations were, we wanted it to be perfect. And that's the thing. You don't go out and launch that show and make mistakes.
Right.
And so we had a lot of new pyro. We had if you remember, the 40-foot inflatables, which you saw outside in Louisville. Yeah. Those were brand new. We were trying to figure out how to deal with those in the wind, and we had a whole separate team of people for those. I mean,
that was the first time I ever bought a $75 T-shirt too. That was the last time I ever bought a $75 T-shirt.
Thank you very much.
We both did. I feel like
God.
I still have mine. Can't fit.
Well, it was the show. The whole tour, everything was interesting, and the fact. So you guys will appreciate this part, because I'm really, I really remember it was something we were conscious of when we talked about designing the show. When it was all confirmed that it was going to happen, and we started to see where it was going to be. It was going to be indoor, outdoor, stadiums, arenas, amphitheaters, so we were going to play everywhere. We were going all over the world numerous times, and so these effects had to work all over the world, and we're flying out over the audience. We had the big lifts from the corners of the stage. We had the 40-foot drum riser. Well, all that was very interesting, because at the time when this started, 17 years is a hell of a long time. So Ace, Gene and Paul have really very good memories about all the minute details, as much as you can. But Ace being a little foggier, and Peter, he's in the drum riser, so he's looking at everything from the back anyway. So his frame of reference was really limited as far as the effects and what did you do here and there, and so kind of funny. Our ace in the hole, no pun intended, was a young lad that was a big fan of Kiss by the name of Tommy Thayer.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy Thayer more or less became my assistant tour manager. And because Tommy was a fan, and so, we started this process, and I said to Gene and Paul, I go, hey, this guy, Tommy Thayer, he's freaking brilliant, because there's not a detail. I said, I said, what we're planning here, we need to do things. We're going to take some things that are historically accurate to what you did in the past, where true Kiss fans know, oh, that's like the staircase from this tour, and that looks like the drum riser, so we wanted to take classic Kiss elements that they had done in the past that the true fans would identify with right away, and certain signature things that happened during the show, where you get Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter, and we're sitting in rehearsals, and I saw some Kiss shows, but I didn't see enough to chime in to know exactly where certain cues were. But Tommy Thayer was sitting there like the Encyclopedia Britannica of Kiss, and was sitting there going, yes, well, on the third bar of this song, that's Ace, that's where you and Paul got over here, and you were back to back, and you shot and I'm like, oh man, guys, you have to hire him. He has to come out with us. He has to be with us 24/7. Plus the fact Tommy's an awesome guy, and he's a legitimate rock star right now. I'm sure he's although he's a humble guy, I'm sure he's a little less humble now, but sweet person, very passionate, and he knew he was a fan, and he still is. I
saw him at the all the official conventions. He was around setting up, helping do this and that.
He was doing the conventions. He was the guy.
Right.
He was the guy that put all the. I had worked with him a little bit on helping him, but he did most of the designs with Gene and Paul. They did the displays, organized the cases. I helped him. I helped him with the how to make it roadworthy, to do it convention style like we do on the road, but they took the ball and ran with it. But talking about starting the tour and designing what is going to be the biggest tour in years, certainly it was the biggest tour of the year in '96, and how to do that and how to do the little things. So a couple of things we paid attention to were things like that, of how to really touch the true Kiss fans, because there's so many of them out there.
Right.
Can you go back for just a second? So after the conventions were over, and while they were getting, after the Unplugged, then when the debut of the four of them back on the Grammys, talk about how did that whole thing take place, and was that a last minute planned thing, or was that planned for quite a while? And that
the
was
Grammys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, the Grammys was being worked on right up into the minute that it happened. Doc and I believe called quite a few million favors, and I mean, it's a thing where Doc has had a lot of great artists where you develop relationships with the producers. And by the way, it's not a terribly hard thing to tell the producer, by the way, I want to sneak Kiss on your TV show for the first time in makeup together, and we want him with somebody. We want to flip the script. Somebody really that will send people on their ear. Well, that's Tupac. Okay, so Tupac introduced them, and I mean, it was an amazing thing, because what's important to those guys is that they that not only was it announced on the Grammys in front of a worldwide audience, but they got that cred. There were a lot of people in the audience that were there receiving Grammys that started in this business because of those four guys in makeup. And so that was a moment.
So it wasn't a surprise. I mean, there was nobody that really knew about it. I mean, it was that much.
Oh, no, it was a major secret. Oh, no,
Wow.
major secret. It was, I think they let it out a little bit, but no, it was pretty much, I knew about it, of course, but it was it was a pretty big secret.
I remember when they panned across the audience, you could see some of the stars. I mean, they had a surprised look on their face, and they were excited. And you could almost see the excitement in their eyes. It was
not officially announced. It certainly wasn't announced pre-broadcast.
Right.
Like I'm saying, it may have just squeaked out rumor-wise a little bit, but I didn't hear it. It certainly wasn't anything official. I mean, it was, it was a huge thing. And then, of course, the press conference of the tour, because as one of my favorite mottos, and certainly we adapted it on that tour and for all the KISS projects, is anything worth doing is worth overdoing. Right. And so, then we went and did the press conference on the on the Intrepid. On the Intrepid in the middle of New York, and brought the KISS sign, and sometimes my job is interesting, trying to figure out how to get power to the KISS sign on the Intrepid. So right. So it has its but it was great. Doing it's not all just doing live shows. Sometimes it is figuring out how to do. One of my most fun shows and proudest moments, certainly on television, and at the television, was the Dick Clark Rockin' New Year's at the base of the Brooklyn Bridge,
right?
Where I had you talk about Toy Box. It was like, okay, all right, Tim, listen, we're doing a one-off. And a one-off is, basically a one isolated show where it's not part of a tour. So you look at that, a one-off, as when you're looking at producing or designing a show for a tour, you're looking at what is the formula that you can put up consistently and make happen every night in a different city. Where you're doing a one-off and you have the opportunity to, maybe have a little more time and get a little more stupid in your scope of things.
You're gonna blow shit up,
the Brooklyn Bridge was, yeah. So we're like, oh, can we be there for like 2 days, and can we actually talk to the people, and can we hire them and order what we want for the fireworks out near the Brooklyn Bridge? So not only did I get to order all the fireworks and pyro on the stage, but I got to order and design all the fireworks in the background. Wow. And, one of the cool parts about it is about, I would say about 11 o'clock Eastern, I'm over by the stage, and, I call in to check with Times Square Control Center, which was the coordinating television spot, the studio that's where they coordinated the Dick Clark's New Year's Eve show out of. So I called them to just double check. Okay, listen, here's what's going to happen. You're going to come to us, and we're going to go introduce live from you, and then we're going to do a live intro here, and then we're going to throw it to them, and they're going to go rock and roll all night, and then we're going to go through the song, and then fireworks, and you stay with us. So we finished that, and so I called back to the studio, and I'm looking for one of the producers, and I say, hey, who's this? It's Dick. I said, okay, Dick who? This is Dick Clark. I'm like, no, really, I said, he said, who's this? I said, oh, it's Tim over at the production manager for KISS. And so we had a nice conversation, but I really didn't think Dick Clark would be answering his own phone. But so that was, and although it was maybe a 5-second conversation, I actually spoke to Dick Clark. So. Which was cool. Just, another little thing that was like, geez, did that just really happen? Did it really just happen? That was, it was done and gone. Bam. But that was, we really had an opportunity to do such amazing shows. And so I don't even know where we started that conversation, but I do remember it ended with a lot of fireworks at the Brooklyn Bridge.
Well,
that's cool.
You spoke about talking to Dick Clark and not expecting him to answer his own phone or whatever. Kind of on the lines of that, did you get a little starstruck when you talked to him? And if not him, have you ever been starstruck with anybody that you've worked with? And if so, who would that be?
Well, I can answer it this way. I've never been starstruck with anybody that they knew of. I don't think. I mean, I got to be pretty cool pretty good at trying to keep my composure because going back to what I was telling you before, I think you kind of, all the people have a great radar. If they feel discomfort, they probably quickly move on. And if you've got business to talk to them about, you need them to pay attention and feel comfortable as much as you can. So, and it's not all business, a lot of it is social, but, it's hard to say because so young in my life, I met people that, I was, starstruck with, and I met them before I even knew what was going on. So, after seeing them in Muddy's presence and seeing them be reduced to a mere mortal, it took my starstruck out of it. But I will tell you that I've had many moments in my life, in my career, where I got just chills, just like I'm so lucky to be here moments. One of them, I was just absolutely blessed and lucky enough to be involved in stage managing 4 out of the 5 Eric Clapton Crossroads festivals.
Wow.
And on those, there were every living star that I could imagine to deal with, and I got to deal with them all, and in a very relaxed environment. And Willie Nelson and BB and Jimmy Vaughn and Eric and Robbie Robertson and Johnny Winter and the list, Jeff Beck, Steve Winwood, my heroes, my absolute heroes.
Right.
And just being able to interact with all those people. But that was such an overwhelming experience, and I was in a position where I needed. You can't be starstruck in that. You have to almost look at them with indifference, and in a funny way, you find yourself feeling comfortable to needling some of these guys and girls sometimes, because it's almost like that, because you're going the opposite sometimes of starstruck, to the point that you can't be coming off as unimpressed either, because you're certainly not. Some people you are not unimpressed, you're just unflattered by, but more than not, they're all
that was very polite, Tim.
That was.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's most everybody is really cool, and what you find out is when you do act normal, and they feel like you have been there, and you can be trusted. Like Steven Tyler said to somebody that was in his dressing room last time I walked in and visited him. He said, "Well, here comes somebody, and he hasn't written a book yet. But when he writes one, everybody should watch the hell out." And I said, "You know what, Stephen? When I write my book, there won't be any dirt in it at all, because I don't need to put any dirt, because I've got so many awesome, good, cool, funny, fun stories that, the dirt is, everybody wants to see a train crash, but all this other stuff is more fun." And I have so many fun and good stories and funny stories that don't ever need any dirt. And if I did tell any dirt, he'd be digging out of it for years.
The thing is, too, though, if people have bad stories about people like that, everybody has a bad day. And you may have, people run into these people and say, well, he was a real dick and blah, blah, blah. Everybody's a dick at some point in their life. They had a bad day or bad something happen. Yeah. So you can't just judge. I've been very lucky. I have yet to meet somebody who's, I've met a few of my people that I look up to, and I've been really lucky. I've never had that, but I've heard other.
I thought you were going to say you've never met anybody that didn't like you. So I was going to say I'm certainly.
No, that would be a lie.
I've certainly met a few people that haven't liked me. I'm especially with the internet. I turned down somebody, a couple million people with backstage somewhere, so I'm sure there's a lot of people not happy with me. But as far as the whole Kiss thing goes, it was an amazing time. I mean, we did. I think we did.
Said 7 years. How many tours then did you go with? How many tours were you with them?
Well, it was 3 tours, but there were a lot of in between tours. There were a lot of things like. Now that you're saying it, the Kiss conventions did start before the reunion. Then there was a whole nother slate after the actual reunion tour of Kiss conventions.
Right.
that went overseas, and so there's a whole nother round. I got those a little bit confused because you're right. We did. It was the precursor, and and it was good that they kept the brand alive. But keeping the brand alive is a lot different than getting the other two. There's only two other people on the planet that could have agreed to do that to make it whole, and they did. And when that happened, it was nothing short of amazing. However, and I'm sure Paul wouldn't get mad at me for saying this, but I distinctly remember one of the first secret rehearsals that happened in New York when the reunion tour was confirmed. Now this is after Unplugged. So there was a little time for détente and warming up, and but this was the official first with the monitor system in a sound studio, secret. Only me, Tommy Thayer, monitor engineer, and the 4 band members were in there and knew about it. And it was kind of funny because, like I said, 17 years is a long time, and it's like riding a bike. But there were more train wrecks or more bicycle accidents, let's say, in those first few rehearsals. And I remember Paul Stanley looking at me, and they were halfway through one of the rehearsals and mightily struggling through one of the old classics. And he looked at me and rolled his eyes, and I said, okay, a wee bit of work to do here. And so, and we knew there was, the expectations were high, the goals were high, and I got to say, Peter, Chris, and Ace worked really hard too, but Peter, Chris, physically as well as just song-wise and performance-wise, worked his ass off to get back into playing shape. Because hey, next thing you know, it's a grueling show. It's not an easy show.
No, not at
all. For
all.
a drummer who's in shape to play. Let alone somebody who hasn't been actively playing. And, it's like anything else, guys. Once you let those things out of the barn door, you're committed. And then it was like, all right, well, let's do this.
Right.
So how did it, when did you get off the tour? When were you finished, and what did you see? Yeah, that's kind of how did you end up not being part of the tours anymore?
Well, I finished. You go through cycles. I mean, I they're like relationships, they're like a marriage in a lot of ways. You get together with people and you live with them, and you see the good parts, the bad parts. People come and people go. As far as sometimes there's management changes. Sometimes there's band member changes. I kind of think that it's good to go out on top when things are, when you're all still friends. And we did that. There was, it was a nice parting of the ways. And usually that happens when you have an intersecting project coming up. And what happened after the reunion tour is, I believe, right after the reunion tour, I went on to either, I'm going to have to look back, but either Journey or I went on to some other tour, and they extended the tour, and then Kiss, decided they were going to start up at a certain point, and at a certain point you have to make a decision. We had just finished a 1.5 year long reunion tour. The next tour they did, I think, was Psycho Circus.
Right.
And so they took a break and wrote an album for a while. And a lot of times what happens is, it's a relatively small business. There's only a couple, really, probably under 10,000 people total in that whole industry because it's very interconnected. For instance, I brought virtually my whole former Aerosmith crew on to start with Kiss. So, a lot of us stopped with Aerosmith, and that was a natural transition because they decided they wanted to go off the road and write an album. And so we continued touring with somebody else, and that happened to be Kiss. And then at a certain point, sometimes, it works out where you go tour to tour to tour, and you're taking the same breaks as they are. But frequently I'm a hired gun, and so when for instance I'm in between the summer tour now and planning for a spring tour and another summer tour, but I'll get called to do an awards show, or I'll get called to do another short run with somebody else, or a holiday run or something like that. And so it just is kind of the luck of the draw. And I do remember that they took some time off to do Psycho Circus. I started touring with another artist, and that tour collided. And at a certain point, you have to decide, okay, am I going to continue the scope of work and what I'm doing now with this?
Right.
And sometimes it's good to not, to not overdo your relationship. I mean, it is it's good to remain friends. It's good to stop dating while you still love each other.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny. You mentioned Hired Guns, and we did that show last week. Was that last week?
Yeah, last
week.
Seems like only yesterday.
Yeah, it seems like it does. They start running after we do 100. They start running together, which is awesome.
Yes. By the way, and before I forget, guys, congratulations on your 100th show. I'm honored to be the guest on the 100th show, and it is quite a milestone, because what started off maybe as a little hobby and something fun, it's a lot of work to produce 100 shows. It sounds like you're still having fun. It's a great credit. But thanks for having me.
We're sitting around on Monday going, dudes, we got to come up with a topic.
Don't tell people that. They think this is all planned.
No, I'm just.
No, it's when you talk about Hired Guns, it's very interesting, because this whole thing how this whole thing came about to even get you here is just very ironic. I know your brother, Jack, through
right.
the work that he and I do together, have done together. I don't know if Jack told you this story, but last week or 2 weeks ago, I was at a convention in Chicago, and the rep that I typically deal with that works with Jack's come up to me and he goes, "Hey, Jack Rozner's got something for you," but he didn't bring it with him. About that time, Jack comes around the corner and goes, "Hey, Bill, what's going on?" I said, we talked a minute, and he goes, "Hey, I got you something you're going to think is really cool, because I know you're really into Kiss. I got an autographed shirt for you." And I said, "Oh, that is so cool." And I'm like, "This is awesome." He goes, "Yeah, I got it from my brother. He's he's just done some work with them before." And I said, "What? What do you mean he's done some?" And I'm like, I'm totally caught. I mean, there's like thousands of people in this convention. I'm like, talk to me more about that. And he said,
everything went silent as soon as you heard kiss, 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 kiss.
I heard nothing else, man. It was over. And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, he's the tour manager for the Revenge tour." And so I'm like, "Are you shitting me?" He goes, "No." And I said, okay, I'm at a convention for work, but the only cards I have with me in my wallet, because I forgot my cards that day, were my Ages of Rock podcast cards.
Cool.
So I whip out one of my Ages of Rock podcast cards. I borrow a pen, and I write my phone number on the back of the card, stuff like that. And I'm like, I need to talk to him, because our 100th show is coming up, and it would be cool as hell to have him on our 100th show. That would be incredible for us. And so
timing is everything. Timing
is everything. So he walks away. We get home, and all of a sudden we start talking about the show Hired Guns. So we start we start watching the show Hired Guns. And I'm watching it, and I look at the ad. I see the ad on Netflix, and I scroll up on the computer. I'm like, that says written by Tim Rozner.
Really?
That's what it says.
So you mean I should be getting paid for a Netflix show right now?
I don't know. It's a movie. Did you not help with a movie?
That was a different Tim.
It's a
Was it really a different Tim?
Yeah.
I thought it was the
well,
same
you
dude.
know, I still think I should be getting paid something for
I
that.
think you should be getting paid. So I
wait a minute. Let me ask first, how is it?
It's great.
Oh, it is a great show.
Yeah, it's a really good show.
It is such a good show that we did an episode about it last week.
Yeah.
All right.
And so when you said Hired Gun, this is a great segue.
No,
I should be. Well, and I will tell you that, and you know what, guys? I promise I will come back on a follow-up podcast to do to talk all about the television show that I am developing that's going to be the ultimate behind-the-scenes look about this business. And it's going to...
Oh, that's cool.
And it'll be tailored for people that love this whole part of the world like you guys do. And I mean, it's there are so many fascinating things, so many colorful characters behind the scenes. Sometimes the people that are behind the stage are equally as colorful and interesting as the ones on the stage. And it's a interesting and beautiful blend of lunacy and brilliance at the same time. So I'll let you guys in on it one of the first when it's close to getting out there.
That sounds cool.
Cool. Well, it looks like I blew that because I just got a message from one of our guys here that said you're an idiot. So I'm an idiot. I blew that one.
No, he called you a dummy.
No, that's okay. I'll be happy. Maybe that's the guy that's been trying to steal my frequent flyer miles. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, hey, this show is never short of a mistake.
We're okay. That's
okay. It has been
facts.
it has been great having you on. You're working on something right now, right?
Yeah,
so talk a little bit about what's going on right now.
I'm working on something right now. We just put on sale a spring run of Styx, REO Speedwagon, and Don Felder shows that are going to happen March and April. And it's the summer run we did was so fun, successful. Everybody loved it. That the promoters, Live Nation and AEG and a number of other ones got together and said, would you please fire this back up in the spring for another 20 dates? And so we are, and just put that on sale. And it's going to be a little bit different design, but pretty much everybody loved the show this summer so much. As far as, now I'm talking about us. I know the fans really enjoyed it. We had great crowds everywhere. And it's a spectacular show. You talk about classic rock, guys. The show starts off, first of all, it's a 4-hour show. Don Felder playing all Eagles songs with a couple surprises. And with a killer band, Stevie D on drums, who plays with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and David Gilmour. You've got you just had Kazim Sultan on bass with Joan Jett and Todd Rundgren, Timothy Drury from Whitesnake, and Felder, and I mean, so you start off with a standing ovation on a 4-hour show. Wow. And Tommy from Styx, Tommy Shaw from Styx, and Dave Amato from REO have come up back and forth and joined Don on Hotel California. That's how the show starts. And then you got another 70 minutes of, and they flip-flop headliners, but another 70 minutes of REO Speedwagon, another 70 minutes of Styx for a 4-hour show. And, we use full sets, so nobody has a little part of the stage. We do complete set changes, and it's a big, beautiful thing to watch technically, because I think our what we call the set change dance, the changeover in between bands is, we've got it down pretty much to a high-powered, high-voltage ballet, and it's a great thing. And Styx just released this new album, which I've known these guys for 30 years, been working with them for over 20 years straight now, and they just released this new studio album, which, by the way, is, I believe it's 1 or 2 in Classic Rock Album of the Year. The voting is going on right now, so get out there and vote for it. It's called The Mission. Mm-hmm. So, if you guys haven't had a chance to listen to this, I'm not a record promoter. I just love these guys, but more importantly, they have hit home runs so many times before. But this album is amazing. You gotta listen to this album on headphones. It's a concept album where you listen to it. It's old school. You listen to it from start to finish. They pressed it on vinyl, which sold out. I think 3 pressings have already sold out on vinyl, and it's just really cool. And REO's got a Christmas album out, and so it's hits all night. So yeah. I walk around and pinch myself because again, I get to sit and have lunch and dinner every day with all these guys, and we've got great production staffs.
Cool.
I'm one of many people not only on my crew, but in this business, that are really into what they do and love it. We're the luckiest people in the world, man. I tell you, because everybody wants to leave their job and come to ours.
That's coming to Evansville, to the Ford Center. They just announced it, so I'm going to be
coming to Evansville. Yes,
I'm will definitely. It's on a Wednesday night, so I'm definitely going to be. It's March 21st.
Let me tell you, you guys will be guests of mine.
Oh well, thank you.
So
well,
you guys
unfortunately,
there and I'll give you the full tour. I'll show you what it looks like and what it feels like from the backstage side, looking out front, and give you a little idea of what happens on a daily basis. And it's pretty cool. It's a good thing, because you're coming to see what I'm really, really proud of the whole tour and the production. So to be able to show friends around, on this one, I mean, I'm proud of all of them, but this one's kind of a special baby to me. So
cool.
Well,
I'll
you can't
go, but anyway, Bill's mad.
Yeah, what you can't see is me scrunching my face, because I have to be in New Orleans at 8:00 the following morning. So I will not be able to make it to Evansville, Indiana.
That's okay. They have private jets.
But I live in Newburgh, just right next town over, so I will definitely be able to go. So I will definitely.
Well, we're going to be in a couple places, so if you guys can't make it there, we'll. But I would love you to come see that show, and it's going to be great. And long live classic rock. It wasn't too many years ago that everybody was making fun of the quote unquote dinosaurs.
Oh,
well, looky now, classic rock is what is supporting the entire music industry. The entire music industry.
Well, I mean, coming from Evansville, Indiana, because of REO and them from Southern Illinois anyway. A summer wasn't a summer until you seen REO. I mean, they came to Evansville every summer, usually out there at Mesker, out to the amphitheater that we used to have.
Right.
And
That's right.
I mean, it was just every year. When's REO going to be here? Because it ain't summer until we see those guys.
And that's why I've been to Evansville so many times, and that's it. This is what we're doing. This spring run we're doing. In summer we did 30 shows in 30 different cities, and most of them were major markets. We played all the major markets, major metropolitan centers, and this one is a secondary market where it's funny because, like you just said, it means that's the normal diet. That's a constant in the universe there in Evansville, and it's consistent. And you go back and you feel so welcomed in a place like that. It feels like it's always a special show. I mean, always. When we take this show going through anywhere through the Midwest, every show is special because almost everybody that comes in the show, it's generational. You got people that are bringing their kids and their grandkids to the show. Think about that. It's it's 3 generations coming to that, and it's real cool. So,
well, I seen him like years ago at Robert Stadium and at one of their summer shows, and Neil Dowdy's mom and dad, when they were alive, lived in Newburgh. Mm-hmm. And I actually, Jeff, his cousin, we went to college together. So he says, "Hey, we're going to meet up at this." So we sat to the side of the stage with Neil's mom and dad. I mean, how cool is that?
Now, who was on the show? Who was on that show?
That was Zebra. God, who else was it? Survivor, Zebra, and REO maybe. God, that was years ago. I mean, it was years ago. But
I have to hear who was on the show to figure out whether I did the show or not. But
yeah, it would have been 84, 85, probably 84.
Right.
It was. But like I said, those were great times. And like I said, they were just.
Hey, Tim, are you doing the French Lick show with Styx?
I believe that is a Styx only show.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I will not be on that one. But let's see.
All right, I'll try to find another one.
I'll tell you what. Here, let me look at the. I'll tell you right now. Let's see.
Oh, I'm looking at the tour, dude. Hold up. Scrolling along, buddy.
You got it pulled up. All right.
I do.
Well, I might have some dates that you don't have on pulled.
Well, probably.
Sometimes, with the age of the internet, sometimes I'm surprised. Sometimes people say, "Hey, are you?" I'll see you when you come here, and they, sometimes they hear about shows before I do. It's not the first time it's not the first time that happened. I mean, normally I'll start working on the production of a show. Sometimes, good couple, 2-3 months easy out from the show. We'll start talking about the details of it. But, sometimes it's like, hey, I'll see you at the end of December and so. Okay, I guess I'll be there if you're telling me I'll be there.
So Tim, will you come back on and we'd like to spend some time talking about how the production thing works. Just how does the whole thing happen? How do you route a tour, and how do you? That's something I think we're really interested in. I think people would really like to hear that back behind the scenes thing. I mean, to me, something I've always wanted to do is to go sit in an arena and watch a load in.
Well, you can come watch one of mine coming up here soon. And I'll tell you what, it is when you see, you can go on YouTube and look at time lapse of load ins, but you can see that there is an order. And I will tell you that, without boring you with a lot of detail about it now, once you establish a plan, when you see all those semis pull in and out, all those semis down to the way each individual case is rolled into the truck, even once it's rolled into the truck, which way it goes. Does it flip up with the wheels towards the back? Each case is different but goes in the same way, if you're doing it right, every single night. And, every single thing that moves on the set change, every single thing that happens, there's very, very little ad lib going on in any side of the production. The bigger the production gets, the more structured I like to tell people that rock and roll is the greatest problem-solving community in the world, even more so than the military, because they, and I also like to remind people, hey, what we do is great. We're the luckiest people in the world. We're not dodging bullets and we're not saving babies, but all those people that do that like to come to our show to relax, and we love the fact that they all can, and everybody else. But it happens the same way. It happens with military precision without the red tape,
right?
Because there's an awful lot of money involved, and it's a never say die, can do attitude with the way tours are done. And it is fascinating because we come and really build the equivalent of a small city within a couple days, or sometimes hours, most of the time hours. When we come in and load in a typical show, for instance, if you're talking KISS, we came in, depending on what tour, let's say it's an average of 19 or 20 semis. And when I say semis, they're 53-foot containers filled from top to bottom, front to back. There's no half-filled airspace stuff. They're filled.
Right.
And, you start at 7 or 8 in the morning and you're ready by showtime. And that takes a real well-oiled machine with a lot of people touring and in conjunction with locals put together. But, it is a very fascinating business, and it's there's a lot to be learned in a lot of other parts of the world about different people getting along, people being able to go into any foreign environment in foreign countries and get along and work together. That's one of the greatest things about rock and roll touring is, the people are crazy and they're international and they're pretty much, they're fearless.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've told Bill, I have a cover band that we play twice a month.
Yeah, I'm not coming to watch that.
He could come and watch me set up and tear down. He can help. He just won't take me up on it, though.
And I run a sound company. He could come help me.
But what you're saying is true. Even on even in our cover band situation, I own the trailer and own the equipment, and that crap goes in every time one way. I mean, I've got it down to a science.
You do.
And it's just, and you do it I let the guys borrow it one time, and I play at night, so they got and I got my trailer back. I had to unload it, son of a bitch, and reload it because they didn't get it right. I was like, take a fucking picture of it before you start taking shit out.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's,
everything.
Because
it took a while to figure it out. It rides nice, nothing gets broke, and that's the way it happens every time.
Well, it's so critical.
They bring
man, I'll tell you what you just said is so amazing. That's the other thing that would surprise a lot of people is, all those trailers that we have, they're all air ride. They have to be a cushioned ride because if, especially in this day and age, going from point A to point B, if you hit rough weather or rough roads, it can really depend on how your show arrives in the next city. And so much of what we do today, more than ever, is you can't call somebody up and duplicate that. You can't call up the local hardware store and order a 5'6" by 7'4", 7-foot high hydraulic piano lift for Elton John because it's broke. You've got to fix it. It's got to work.
Sorry, we just sold our last one. Sorry.
Yeah. That's right. We had one, and
Billy Joel's using it.
But the
Billy
guys
Joel
from Queen of the
got
Stone Age just rented it. So.
All right.
Oh,
Bill.
man. All right. On that note, we better get out of here.
All right, guys. Great talking to you. Thanks for having me again, and keep on rocking. We'll talk again soon.
Well, hang
Tim,
on
is there
for a
any?
second.
Is there any kind of if people want to connect with you? Do you have a Facebook page, or do you have any of that kind of stuff, or are you?
I have a Facebook page, Tim Rozner, Rozner, and but I'll soon be releasing more information about the TV show, and there's a few other projects that are very interesting that will be right up the mainstream of people that are into this type of. Just loving live music and of all kinds, and in the world of production. So you'll find it very interesting, and you'll be hot on the trailer, the first ones to get the news.
That'd be awesome.
We're definitely
All
going
right,
to have you on again because we want to talk to you about a bunch of shit. So,
all right. So if you're out, if the Styx REO Speedwagon Don Felder tour is coming to a city near you in the spring, make sure you check it out. And if you see
really
Tim walking
enjoy it.
around, give him some props. You'll see him. He looks just like a telephone.
That's right. That's right. Well, you got my picture. I sent you a picture, which, by the way, the picture that I sent is that's me in the center with all the guys from Styx and REO Speedwagon and Don Felder at the end of this last tour. It's something that I've been doing for about 25 years. We do that with every single person on the tour, every electrician, caterer, everybody gets their own individual picture with all the rock stars on stage.
That's cool.
That is
That's
very
cool.
cool.
It is.
Very
It takes, I kind of did it by a fluke 25 years ago and have done it on every tour since, and it's one of the most valuable things because, there's a lot of people, and I'll just leave you with this. I had a truck driver on the last tour come up to me literally in tears and said, I've been in this business for over 20 years, drove millions of miles for all kinds of different stars, never even met a star, let alone got my picture with all of them with their guitars on and stage gear. And he said, this is the coolest thing, better than any bonus he could have gotten. So
wow.
I said,
That's
good,
nice.
because you're not getting a bonus. All right, guys. Have a great night. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Merry Christmas to you. Hey, hang
Alan.
on. Don't hang up quite yet. Hey,
Okay.
you're gonna
Alan,
be
go
able
ahead.
to- yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Alan, you want to take us out?
That's right. Yes, I sure will. Visit us on 80sofrock.com. Check us out on Stitcher Radio. We are on Instagram and Facebook and all of that good fun stuff. Twitter, don't forget. Till next week, peace out.
Hey.
Thanks for listening to the Ages of Rock podcast. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and most importantly, tell all your friends. Remember, you're never too old to rock. Until the next episode, peace out, folks.